I personally believe that more bass players should embrace saturated, clean sounds. What do I mean by that? I think when you have a saturated bass signal, it sits better in a mix. It's more interesting. I think a lot of bass players go straight into a DI or straight into the interface or straight into a Class D amp. I think it can sound a little boring, a little sterile. So we're going to test it. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play straight into the recording interface, and then I'm going to reamp it out into a vintage tube amp and mic it up, and then we can kind of A/B it and compare. And you can decide for yourself, or we can actually listen. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be fun. Here we go. Okay, what am I doing? I'm gonna reamp my direct signal through this 60s flip top. So if you don't know what that is, I have this little reamping box here. But it's basically like an inverted direct box. We're changing a line out signal from my interface back down to the correct impedance that would be appropriate for an amplifier. I can send the signal out of that through this into the amp, into a microphone, back into the interface. It allows you to tweak your tone while you're not playing. You can listen to yourself in third person, which is really helpful. And for the sake of this video and this experiment, it's gonna allow us to hear the same performance, clean versus saturated amp mic'd up, and we can hear the real difference. I think it's gonna be fun. So I'm gonna wire this together, and here we go. Okay, so let's listen to this. Let's listen to the clean DI in a mix, see how it sounds. Now here's the amp. Okay, let's listen to these isolated. So here's the clean DI by itself. Here is the reamp. It's interesting. The amp isn't super bright sounding. I had it pretty flat, but when I'm playing harder, I'm getting more upper information because of the saturation, like the drive that's happening in the tube amp, which is cool. Like I'm getting more information out of the top end the harder that I'm playing, whereas the DI, it's kind of articulate throughout. Versus the amp. This is so interesting to me. It's like the amp sounds smoother and more character at the same time. I really prefer the amp personally. I mean, I'm a little biased because it's my amp, but I do think it sounds very good in context. For the record, that sounds fine. Okay, to me, I like that so much better. I feel like it fits. It feels like it's more in the song. It's more locked in with the drums, and it lives in the ecosystem of the mix better. Like, it has more traction, but it's also smoother. But then there's some variety with, as I'm playing harder, more grit is coming out of the amp, and as I'm playing softer, it gets smoother. It's just a more interesting character to me. There's nothing wrong with the clean sound, but like, if I were the mix engineer here, I would definitely use the amp. And I should say, there is totally a world where you can use both. That's actually a really popular thing, is blending them together, where you can use the clean sound for some of the pure low end information and articulation and clarity, and then you can use the amp for grit. You can EQ them in different ways, blend them in different ways, although I do think it's important to note you need to be really careful with phasing to make sure that those parts are perfectly in sync with each other, so you're not going to create any sort of phasing problem, which would actually pull the low end out, which is the whole reason you might use both. Because the more you saturate some things, the more low end information you can lose. That's something you need to be careful with bass and saturation. That's why having something that has a blend knob is really nice, like certain preamp pedals or DIs, where you can get like saturation, but you can also blend in an unsaturated signal. That is a really nice feature. Although I should say, you don't need to have a tube amp to do this. You don't need to have a vintage amp to do this. You could accomplish this with a pedal, with certain DIs, with software. In fact, I'm going to show you real quick something totally free. One of my favorite plugins you can use. This is not an ad. This is just a free plugin that's very useful. It's this soft tube saturation plugin. I use this a lot, that can let you add sort of vintage saturation on things, and it has this switch here for keep low, which is going to allow the low frequencies come through unaffected. Let's listen to that DI track without it, and then I'm going to add it in. Right here. And take it off again. That's cool to me, like having a little bit of grit, like a little bit of the fuzz on a peach, like a little bit of something. It's helping this sort of sterile, anemic DI sound sit in the track a little better, I think, personally. And that's a totally free plugin. So the point is, you don't need a reamp through a vintage tube amp to get saturation. There's so many ways you can achieve it. You can achieve it with a pedal, with a boost pedal, with a preamp pedal, with an actual preamp or amplifier, with software. You could even get saturation from tape, recording to tape, or a console. There's so many different options. And this is where it gets fun, is you as the creator, you as the bass player, you can choose what saturation you like. And that's going to be part of the fun. So the point is, a little bit of saturation, I think, can really help you sit in a mix. It can help give you some natural compression, some more texture, and just some more interest and zing that's going to help you sit inside of a song. Just a little bit of the right spice thrown in there, I think, is going to help make your bass tracks come to life. And this applies to recording and also live and playing on stage. So I think it's a helpful thing, but let me know what you think. So which one did you like better? Did you like the clean signal or the saturated signal? And also, if you're like me and you like saturated bass signals, what are some of your favorite sources of saturation on a bass? By the way, my name is Philip Conrad. I am a guest on the Stringjoy channel, so a huge thank you to Stringjoy for having me. I have a channel of my own if you're interested in bass related stuff, Philip Conrad Music, if you want to check that out, and I hope to see you on another video soon. Thanks.